Whether phones, tablets, or gaming devices, many parents find themselves in conflict with their children over screen time. I want to tell you to stop. Just stop. Because in many cases, this will be counterproductive. You'll be achieving the opposite of what you're trying to do. And in some cases, it could be causing long-term harm. In this week's episode, I'm going to explain why and give you some better strategies that put relationship first. So keep listening to find out more. Welcome to the SEN Parent Survival Guide podcast. My name is Esther Freeman and I teach parents the principles and techniques from how my daughter went from 5 or 6 violent meltdowns a day to virtually 0. In this weekly podcast, you will learn how to have a calmer family life. So make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss an episode. Screen time can be a constant source of conflict in families, and that creates a home environment of stress and conflict. And this is good for nobody. And it also is doing some very serious potential harm to your child. And I want to explain why. So there are 4 reasons. And the first is that many parents approach screen time by putting limits on it. Now, what you're doing when you do this is you're moving into the scarcity zone. And ask any marketing executive about scarcity and they will tell you that is the quickest way to make someone want something. Think about the adverts that you see online or on TV. They're often this limited offer, it will end soon. We only have 100 of these to give away and then they'll be gone. It makes you want it immediately. So rather than stopping your child having so much screen time, you are actually making them want it more. And then what could happen long term is they've just not learnt the skills to manage their own screen time. So you're just storing up problems for later use by making them want it more, not less. The other reason that these kind of limits are problematic for managing screen time is that it is causing such conflict in your relationship with your child. This means when they really need you, when they have actually come across some real problems online, maybe they're being bullied, maybe they've seen something that's upsetting or disturbing, maybe they've downloaded something and brought with it some malware, they may not be able to come and talk to you about it because you've made tech such a source of conflict. And we don't want that. We want to have an open relationship where our children feel comfortable to talk about things when they are problems. The next reason that this could be a problem, especially if you have neurodivergent children, is that gaming and other online platforms can be a source of safety and sanctuary, especially after a long, hard day at school or some difficult social interactions, maybe a club or a party. It's a place where they can come and de-stress and unwind and decompress because it's hard managing in a world which is not set up for their needs. So by preventing them from having this, you could be storing up later problems, including autistic burnout, which is real and very serious. I also know lots of autistic children, particularly boys, who manage their social relationships online. So if you're limiting the time they spend online, you're limiting their social interactions. And they do this because it's easier for them online. It's easier to manage relationships online than in real life. And you wouldn't do this in real life. You wouldn't say, well, you can only spend this amount of time with your friend. You would let them see their friends when they wanted to. So that's another reason why this can be problematic. And the fourth reason, 4, not 3, is that their situation with online sources of information is not black and white. I know that there is some problematic stuff out there. We've recently had some riots which were organised online on Telegram, and there is online bullying and there is access to porn and all sorts of really difficult things, and I am going to get onto talking about managing those later on. But there's also some really good stuff. So we can't take a black and white approach to it because there are some sources of information that your child could access online that would be really useful. I've lost count of the number of times that I've heard young people say that they discovered something about themselves online, maybe about their gender identity or their sexual identity. My daughter likes following this young woman on TikTok who has ADHD, and she's learned something about her own condition through that, and also learned a bit more about anxiety, including how to manage it, because that's what this woman talks about on her TikTok channel. So it's been a really positive experience for her, and we don't want to take that away from them. So we can't see it in black and white. We have to realise that there are some positives and negatives, and we need to learn how to manage those. So that's what I'm going to talk about next, is how we do manage them. So if we're not using time limits, what do we do? So first of all, before we go into anything, what I want to say first is that if you are concerned that your child is moving towards addiction or already addicted, then you need to seek professional advice. So you might want to speak to your GP about referral to CAMHS, or you might want to hire a psychotherapist. So to be clear about what we mean when we say addiction, because the term is bandied around, especially with mobile devices, it's bandied around willy-nilly, and we need to be clear. So an addiction is where the use of the device is having serious impacts on their daily life. So they're unable to do some of the really important things in life, and it's causing serious disruption. This doesn't just mean they're on it a lot. That's not what addiction means. It means that it's causing significant disruption. So if you do think that is your child and you're really worried about them, do go and seek professional help. So if you don't have the budget for a private psychotherapist, and if you're having problems with your GP taking this seriously, or you have got them to refer you but you're just on a really long waiting list to CAMHS, that's, by the way, that's Child and Adolescent Mental Health Services, or CAMHS just won't see you, because I know in some areas they will only see children who are suicidal, because that's the level of demand. It's so out of control at the moment. So if you're in any of those categories and you're just like, what can I do? I would like to recommend tapping, or it's also known as emotional freedom technique. Now, I've talked about tapping in most of my other videos because I'm a huge fan of it. And what it is a form of talk therapy which combines with the ancient Chinese tradition of acupuncture. But instead of needles, we use our fingers and we tap on various parts of the body. These are the parts of the body that we would put needles in if we were doing acupuncture. But what I love about tapping is that you can do it yourself. You don't need any specialist equipment. You might need a little bit of a guidance, and what I would like to offer you, if you are struggling with your child gaming and you're worried it's moving into addiction, I would like to offer you a free one-to-one consultation, and I will put a link to that in the show notes or the video description box where you can book an appointment with me, because tapping can be very successful for these sorts of things. I know I've talked about it before with managing your own stress, your child's stress and anxiety, but it also helps with things like cravings. I do know some people who work with it with alcohol addiction, but also you can use it with things like food cravings. I've used it with my own food cravings and emotional eating habits, and I found it hugely successful. So it does deal with things like that, and if you are interested, check out that link, book an appointment and we can chat. But what about other things you can do, especially if I'm saying to you, ditch the time limits? Yes, I am telling you to ditch the time limits, but I'm not telling you to have no controls over the device at all. So you do still need to put controls on there, and you can use apps like Family Link. I think Apple has its own thing as well. Family Link is Google. And you might want to limit what apps they can download, or at least ask permission from you before you do download it. And you might want to set some limits on things like Roblox, what they can see. You can put age limits on that so you can stop them seeing things that may be not age appropriate for them. And I'm not saying that you shouldn't have downtime on the phones as well. So you might want to have unlimited time, but an agreement that at meal times they come off the device and they come down and have a meal with the family. And you can keep it short, just say 20 minutes, just like you to sit with us for 20 minutes, and then you can go back again. And you might also, if you're doing homework, say, I need the phone or gaming device, whatever, off between these hours because that's when you need to do your homework. That depends if you're doing the homework. I could do a whole separate video about homework, and I probably will at some point, about whether your child should be doing it. But I'm just saying, for those whose children are doing it and want them to do it, then that could be another downtime point. And of course, bedtime. Bedtime is so important for our mental health, so we do need to have some downtime at bedtime. And we know that the use of devices can disrupt sleep, so you might want to have that downtime an hour before they go to bed. So yeah, lift the limits. So maybe at the weekends and holidays, if they want to be on it all day, just let them. But have those restrictions on what they can see and what they can use, and have some restrictions on downtime so that we're protecting those important parts of our mental health. That's eating healthily and sleeping properly. So also, I want you to think about modeling the behavior that you want to see in your child. So I want you to reflect on your own phone usage, your own gaming usage. Maybe you stay up late on Facebook. Maybe you have 1 million WhatsApp chats and you're constantly responding to messages in those. Or maybe you love gaming yourself and you might be waiting for your kids to go to bed, but then you stay up to 3 o'clock in the morning gaming. Believe me, they have a way of finding these things out and of knowing. And the biggest source of conflict can be when they consider you a hypocrite, when you're not practicing what you preach. And also, we just need to model that behavior so that they know themselves. That's how they learn. They learn from us. So we need to be modeling healthy behavior on our phones so that they're doing the same thing. So be honest with yourself, reflect on your usage, and make sure that you're doing what you want your child to do too. So the next point is keep an open and honest dialogue going. We've talked about setting limits and downtimes, and maybe you want to do that in consultation with your children. I know in some cases that may not be possible because of mental capacity or speech and language difficulties, but if you can, have a conversation on why they're setting these limits. For example, my daughter has some limits on Roblox. I let her have it, but I said she's not allowed to play games that are over her age limit because I know she gets triggered very easily. And I explained that to her and I said, I just don't want you seeing things that are going to upset you. And we've had an open conversation, and she did say she thinks she's okay because the images aren't so scary when on Roblox because they're all just that kind of pixelated thing. So I did agree at one point, okay, we can raise it a little bit, but I kept a boundary in there around who she's allowed to be friends with. So she's only allowed to be friends with people she knows in real life, and she's not allowed to be friends with strangers. She's not allowed to talk with strangers on there. She's not allowed to use the chat function. I actually disabled it, but I explained to her why. I said, I had a whole conversation with her about people aren't always who they appear to be online. And so we need to be understanding these things ourselves, and we need to be communicating with them, with our child, so they understand that we're not doing this just to annoy them. Yes, it might annoy them, but we're doing this because we need to keep them safe. That is our job. We need to keep them safe in real life, and we need to keep them safe online. And it's also helping them to understand for the future, when we're not there, how to keep themselves safe from things like data protection, identity theft and fraud. So we need to be instilling these ideas in them early. And we do this by having open and honest conversations with them. The next thing that I would recommend is upping your parental presence around the device. So I've talked about parental presence quite a lot in previous videos. It's a core part of NVR parenting, that's non-violent resistance. This is a relationship approach to parenting. It's very successful with neurodivergent children and those with trauma histories. And as I said, it puts the relationship first. And we do this by upping our parental presence, by spending time with our children. It doesn't have to be a huge amount of time, especially with teenagers who don't really want us around so much, but you could just spend 10 minutes a day doing something that they're interested in, and that could be the game. So maybe you're into gaming yourself, maybe you wouldn't play the games they play, but maybe for 10 minutes you could. Maybe you could just get them to explain what it is and just watch them play. I'm not really into gaming, but I will sit and watch my daughter play Roblox. Sometimes she asks me to have a go. I'm terrible. But I think that actually makes her feel better because it's something I can't do that she can do. So she quite enjoys seeing me completely stuff it up and die within 30 seconds. And it's just something that she can tell me about. Teenagers often don't want us around. They want to be independent. They're finding their independence, but also what teenagers want to do is to be heard and listened to. So ask them, why do you like this? How do you play it? Teach me, show me something. Obviously, if they're just saying go away, then go away. But try to show an interest in their gaming and try and spend a little bit of time with them around something that they enjoy. It has to be led by them. So parental presence, use the gaming for parental presence. The next thing I want to advise you on doing is if you do need your child to stop, we've already talked about those downtimes. If you need them to start onto downtime, you can put controls on the devices, but you also have to remember that when they're gaming or when they're on social media, it actually creates a different experience in their brain. Their brains are firing in a different way, and it's very difficult to quickly come off it. So you might want to put their downtime on them, but if you know the downtime is approaching, I think sometimes the phone warns them themselves, but you may want to warn them. Just letting you know you've got 10 minutes to downtime, so you need to be wrapping that game up. But another thing you might want to do, a bit like the parental presence, is come and sit with them and just talk to them. Just saying, I'm letting you know we've got downtime soon. How are you doing on this game? How many points have you got? Who are you playing with? Maybe you want to just say goodbye to them. The reason that we're having that conversation is not just warning them that the time is coming to an end, but it's also helping to engage that different part of the brain that allows them to do social contact in real life again. Because the leap from being online to being in the real world is actually quite a jump that the brain has to make, and that is why we often see meltdowns at that point of coming off. It's not just because they're kind of being difficult and wanting to carry on playing, of course that's some element, but it's also about what's going on in their brain. So if we're doing brain-based parenting, which I always recommend because there's no point trying to work against the brain just does things in certain ways. So let's work with the brain by trying to slowly and gradually pull them off them by engaging them in a little bit of conversation, and then step by step they're coming down off it and just doing it in that really gentle way. So those are the tips. Give them a try. See how you get on. As I say, if you are really concerned that your child's gaming or other device usage is really out of control, then get in touch with me and maybe we can try using tapping to help manage it a little bit better. There's a link in the show notes or the video description box where you can sign up to some free one-to-one tapping work with me. So until next week, I hope that's useful. If you know someone else who's struggling with this, I think we all know people who are struggling with their kids and screen time, then maybe share this video with them. Also consider giving this a rating and review because that really helps the algorithm, and that means more people will find this advice. We know so many people are struggling out there by themselves, so give something back to the community by giving it a rating and a review, preferably a 5-star rating because that's what's going to help people find it. And until next time, make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss next week's episode, and have a good week, and I'll see you soon. I hope you found that video useful. If you're still struggling with your child and you need some extra help, especially if they're quite demand avoidant, then you might want to check out this video here, because this gives some ideas on how to manage children with PDA profiles. And I know this comes up a lot with gaming. So check that out and see if that helps too.